is Karen Chen from QuestionPro. I have here with me today Andrew Haywood from Daiquiri, a very interesting and new startup that I'll let him explain to you guys. QuestionPro, as many of you know, is a survey platform, and recently we've been looking to expand our offerings. We have an HR product that's about to get launched in the market, so we decided we'll actually start providing these webinars that many HR people, but managers in general, will also find very interesting. As you know, we have moderators in the chat. Please let us know where you're from, who you are. Introduce yourselves. We're very interested to see who else is in this webinar. And we have moderators there. They'll take your questions. If you have any problems tech-wise, like not be able to hear, not be able to, not getting good sound quality, let us know. We'll do our best to remedy it as soon as possible. We are also recording this webinar, so if any of you miss out anything that you have to run off to, we will be posting this on the QuestionPro website shortly afterwards. And you can reach us also over social media with the hashtag #HiringBestPractices. Otherwise, since we're a little bit late, let's get on to it. Like I said, I'm Karen Chen. I'm from QuestionPro. Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and also talk about Daiquiri?
Sure. Thanks, Karen. It's really great to be here and share my insights and experiences. Again, Andrew Haywood. I'm our Director of Staffing or Talent Acquisition here in the Sunnyvale office. So I'm responsible for hiring across all our fronts here in this office. Daiquiri, we are a 5-year-old startup. We're officially gone to market this year in 2016. We have 5 locations, a little over 300 people, and growing like crazy. We were just recently part of the CES keynotes and partnering with Intel, so it's a very exciting time, and we're off to the races, both on the engineering and sales fronts. We've created a augmented reality smart helmet for industry use, and it's a very exciting time for our use case, and as well as the augmented reality use case in all different industries. But we're really targeting industry use, and it's a partnership on safety and actually effectiveness in the workplace.
All right, thanks, Andrew. So I will just introduce our topic for today's webinar a little bit. This kind of has 2 main components that kind of fall into the umbrella term of talent retention and talent acquisition. So just to give you some statistics for the problem, across all industries in America, you basically have an annual 15% turnover rate on average. In certain industries like banking, healthcare, and finance, this goes up to about 17%. I think those who are familiar with the Silicon Valley work culture knows that most of us switch jobs between 2 to 3 years. So it's been a big problem for companies to keep their top talent, especially when they have strategies that require like a longer view. I think the excellent example for this that's been in the news lately is Yahoo, struggling to turn around as they're bleeding. Well, I think the statistic is 1/3 of their workforce has been actively leaving the company every year. And on average, each time an employee leaves, it costs the company about 20% of the employee's annual salary to replace them. The statistic obviously goes higher as you go up when you start replacing VPs and directors. So it's a very real financial cost. Besides the obvious cost, the red numbers on paper, you kind of have the hidden costs that come in as well when you have employees who haven't quite left your company yet, but while they're still working at your company, while you're still paying them a salary, because they're unhappy, because they're disengaged, they will have problems like 37% higher absenteeism, 49% more accidents, 60% more errors and defects. And there has been some very real studies that show that when you track a company's job satisfaction over a period, 65% of those companies report lower share prices when their job satisfaction falls as well. So this cost is to the company, to shareholders, and if you look at it in like a bigger scheme of things, employee retention, employee acquisition, this is a big problem just industry-wide as well, regardless where you may be. And you know, obviously this has been a problem since like the dawn of business, but it really has become like much more acute in recent years as, you know, things have become globalized, products have become extremely sophisticated. For example, the Daiquiri helmet that Andrew showed, you have so many different tech, software, so many components in one product. And obviously business obstacles have become a lot more nuanced. It used to be if you were great in North America, we all thought we were #1. Now suddenly you have to take your product to China, you got to take it to Europe. you're manufacturing in Vietnam. So with all these problems and the fact that time pressure is more acute, we might have had problems, and previously customers were willing to wait a month for us to resolve those problems. Now, customers want a response within days instead. So with all these problems, obviously you need, and not just you, your competitors also need top talent that can respond quickly and creatively to any problem that might appear on a day-to-day basis. And they also need to collaborate with the ever-increasing diverse set of teams and individuals. Actually, like Andrew, do you want to talk a bit about, you mentioned before to me that in your company, obviously with the sophisticated product, you have so many different people working on it from so many different backgrounds. Like how do you make sure like everyone gets along, that everyone's like focused on one vision?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think overall, attracting talent and bringing them in one room and making them work effectively, it's a big challenge. And here in, for example, Silicon Valley, everyone's facing it. And with Daiquiri, our culture is very collaborative. Overall, from the CEO, founder down, everyone's very engaged with recruiting and collaborating across all offices on finding the right talent for Daiquiri and knowing what that is. And overall, in our Sunnyvale office, we actually have a variety of different people from different industries now fused together to really help build this awesome product. Now, some of the things we do, I think across the board, are the hiring managers really sync up and figure out what are some key attributes to the type of person we want here at DAC, besides just skill set, but culturally, kind of, we call, their DNA. Overall, what's our process going to be like? How are we going to give them a great onboarding experience in the early stages and make them successful? We're a startup, but we're at a stage where we're really forming into more of a mid to mature level startup going to market this year. So we're not a 5-person just off the bat, just thinking about what kind of product you're going to launch, start, but we're actually go to market. We're becoming more mature, larger, acquiring companies. So we're at a stage where we're really trying to build an infrastructure and process, both on the hiring side, onboarding, and then HR side. So it is a collaborative effort, and it comes from the top down.
So let's continue on. You said the top-down thing. You obviously, Andrew, have a lot of experience at Daiquiri, and even before Daiquiri, other companies. Can you talk a little bit about just a quick overview, and then we'll go into more detail on each side, each point, like the common problems in talent acquisition?
Yeah, besides a lot of, there's often articles on is there a talent shortage, and how there's a lot of articles on how competitive it is and how to attract the right talent. I think overall there's some key components that make the job of attracting talent and bringing on good people hard. And there are 3 kind of bullet points here. Overall, I think just to make the staffing and the hiring manager and just the hiring process simpler, some key things are, make sure there's a clear plan for hiring. Do we know what the business and the hiring needs are? So do we have this initial plan thought out? 2, do we actually know what we're looking for in the type of person we're trying to bring on board? Meaning, is this a new team? Is this a new role? Have we hired people like this before? Do we want to upgrade? Do we want to evolve the team, for example? Also, do we have brand recognition? Do people know who we are? Do we have to evangelize more to actually explain what we do or get our voice or face out there? So those are key components I feel are in the beginning. If you can hammer these out and have a clear plan for these things, your job will be much easier and focused on talking to more folks, bringing them in the door for the interview, versus scrambling and trying to figure out these items along the way.
So let's talk to your first point about instructor hiring. Can you talk a little bit about, the common questions people don't ask themselves before they go ahead with, people say oh, I want a person. But what's the questions you need to ask and answer first before you start the steps to finding that role or that person for this position?
Right. It's a very good question. I think having a great process and hiring plan initially before you jump in and get started is very key. Now, in general, folks, if they're new at hiring, if they're hiring managers, or if it's a new team, or it's this is all new to them, oftentimes they're going to go through a lot of iterations of ramp up on this. And so overall, the what I found effective is sitting down with the hiring manager and hammering out key things in the process. What is your hiring process going to be like? Is it going to be a phone interview? Is it an on-site? Are you going to have two phone interviews or on-site? And you have to kind of tailor this to each role, I would say. And with that plan, do you want to have a tailor questions for each person? Who's going to handle the first round, the second round? So all these are things you really need to hammer out. Typically, what you see in a general hiring process, you'll have a recruiter do kind of a pre-screening. You'll usually have one or two type of phone or video interviews, and then you'll have either an on-site interview, or sometimes companies like to do a final on-site / selling interview. Maybe you're going to demo the product, but you want to have that figured out prior to talking to someone to figure out in general what that process, who are you going to target, map out maybe the industries, the type of companies, profiles of people that you think would be good. So you have a targeted plan and a laser focus when you're going out of that search. Are you going to post the job somewhere? Are you going to use external agencies? Do you have a sourcing strategy? So have this all mapped out. However way you want to track it, be the ATS or a spreadsheet or some other tool, have this figured out before you jump on it and begin the search.
Thanks so much. But when you talked about how you have this pre-screening process thought out, but even when you after you think it out, where do you actually go to find talent? I'm actually taking a question from someone who left it in the chat. Once you have this set out, where do you go? Does a hiring manager go to LinkedIn? Does a hiring manager go to agencies?
Right. So that's a great question. And nowadays, there's not one silver bullet to finding the best talent. There's going to be a variety of different ways. And typically, I'll first talk about what I see as a good ratio of the source of talent, and I'll go to where to find after that. But typically, you see great hiring programs. 40 to 50% of the hiring is coming from employer referrals. The rest is going to be coming from other avenues, from sourced. That could mean from events, or you proactively reach out to someone, to sending a message to your social network, to then agency. Now, finding talent, it really depends on the role. How are they responding? Maybe some roles respond more to a reach out. Maybe some respond more to a job ad or a posting. Maybe some, they're so niche you have to go to an external agency partner. You're going to have to find different avenues. And I think that, what some questions to ask are, what does the market that industry actually look like? How many people are there out there? Are you looking for a unicorn, or is this type of person really realistic to find, and where are they? And typically, if this is an experienced hiring manager, you want to first tap into the network or current team members and see who they have or who they know and what's their ideal profile, and go from there. Now, if they think this ideal profile is it's going to be really long shot to attract to the current stage of the company, then you have to rethink, are you really looking for the right person right now? But there's going to be different avenues, and LinkedIn's definitely one way. Now I know that the LinkedIn product's great. I'm using it. Overall, there's other products out there that you can use via sourcing and other ways to brand to help attract talent, reach out to talent. Oftentimes, I'll use LinkedIn, for example, for research, and then I'll go and try to find their email address, or go on some other platform to reach out to them, to try to stay more individual and unique, because oftentimes the LinkedIn recruiter messaging is very saturated. They're definitely evolving it to where they want to make sure people aren't spamming people on that platform. But try to be unique in the outreach and approach. And if you can have someone like a hiring manager, a key individual in the company who could be a figure, an attractive point for someone a catalyst to respond to, that often is very effective as well. For example, we just upgraded our office. I call it more we dacronized it, but we really tailored to our kind of culture philosophy. And so we want to bring people in. I call it dating people, but show them the office, give them a demo of the helmet, show them what we're really all about. And when you connect with people closer and closer, they're going to want to gravitate towards what you're doing, and they'll show more interest.
Andrew, I just want to cut in because I actually end up saying most of the slide. But so for DAQRI, like, what are your key requirements? Let's not get into specifics like developers and sales. Obviously, it's a little bit different. But are there some like universal key requirements, and are there some like universal like nice to haves but not absolutely required?
That's a good question. I think one, since we're dealing with so many different skill sets and people from different types of industries, one is, one attribute, we're still a startup, so you're going to come in and we have structure, we're formulating structure, but you have to come in and be super proactive. You want to get things done, and you have to have some form of passion for what we're doing. For example, I came in and I saw a laptop demo of what we're doing, of kind of visualization, and I got a helmet demo in our LA headquarters, and I was pretty much sold on what we're doing and how it's going to impact the society and the workplace. And then, two, are they really a professional in their craft? Do they love what they do? And, three, we really don't have too many egos here. It's about getting stuff done. It's about growing as an organization together. And I think those are key things overall that we look for. And people who come here from all different industries in their own respect have been leaders in what they do. So, that's something that we would look for overall.
Actually, we have a question from James that's kind of relevant to what you just said. You talk so much about, connections, about getting things to referrals. So if people don't have friends in influential positions, do they even have a chance? Like off the top of my head, a good one is new graduates. New graduates come out, they don't have a lot of experience, they might have a lot of passion, they might even have a lot of talent.
Right.
But if they don't have that in because they don't know somebody, where do they even start?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's on the candidate side here. I think, right, and most of the time, if you're just starting out, you're not going to have that network of people unless your father or mother, you had some internship, right, or some kind of connection. Overall, there's some things people can do across the board. One, this is great. I get LinkedIn messages from people who don't have connections at DAQRI, and they say, this great product, I'd love to connect and hear more. They're putting themselves out there, and they're reaching out to an individual within the company, for instance. Overall, make sure, too, first and foremost, you have a digital presence on the web. That's LinkedIn, whatever other platform, but make sure it's professional. It really showcases your skill set. Go to events, go to meetups, for instance, meet people. I remember going to events where they have these reverse career fairs of people would actually show demos of what they created, and you can kind of showcase that. But put yourself out there, go to meetups, reach out to people, get that connection, and start the conversation. You want to start the conversation because you only can see so much on paper, and figure out what the company really needs. If they're looking for a new grad, what are they looking for in a new grad? Do they want internships under their belt? Are they willing to train? Do they want someone who's actually, for example, an software engineer, they produce some kind of code base or product by themselves? So figure out what they really need, but it takes work as someone on the candidate side trying to get in if you don't have a referral connection. But it will pay off.
I noticed we also have some other questions. They seem a little bit more involved, so we'll take it toward the end. We're going to continue on just because I want to make sure that we're on schedule. This slide, actually, again, you've talked a lot about it, so I'm just going to go over it very briefly, just to reiterate what Andrew has said, that obviously, passion, this seems the key thing, but also, being a professional. Like, even if you're a marketing rep, you might not have hard skills. You can't prove that you can solve a coding problem like a developer can. But this doesn't mean that you don't have to you have soft skills obviously instead. And then one thing like Andrew and I often talk about was that even with a marketing rep, when you're doing a hiring, there should still be like a skill or creativity component. I think one of my favorite stories is actually from another friend, and then she said that at their company when they hire marketing or sales, especially marketing reps, they like to toss the person a whiteboard and a marker and go, okay, you have 5 minutes, give me a billboard. And a lot of times, I think sometimes a lot of us when we hire sales reps, when we hire marketing reps, not often enough, we actually incorporate something like a skill and creativity test within the hiring. Andrew, when you hire sales rep and marketing reps, do you do you have these tests as well? I know in QP that we do, but
Right. That's a great question. And a lot of besides engineering, it's hard to oftentimes distinguish who's good and who's not in roles that have more soft skills and have more experience under their belts. And in general, I think it's a great practice to throw in a presentation or some kind of um, on-the-spot question where they have to showcase their abilities, maybe on the board or drawing things out. For example, salespeople, we've done kind of at the last stage, they have to do kind of a writing sample to a presentation in front of the key stakeholders, for instance. Not necessarily a daiquiri, but in my experience, and marketing too. Like, what have they done in marketing? What kind of marketing person are they? Will dictate what kind of, say, creative, or maybe it's a data-centric type marketing person. So it really that will dictate that. But I think it's a great idea to incorporate those things in the process. They can also showcase their passion, their creativity, and what they've done into the interview versus answering these maybe bullet point questions or questions that you could prep for and maybe ease through the interview versus you can show it and walk through it and walk through your thought process and methodology, then that will really be an effective way to pinpoint is this going to be the right person for that particular role.
okay, so let's say you've gone through, the first step. You've figured out exactly how you're going to hire. Now we go to the second step. You already figured out exactly what you want. But now we come into the third problem where even though you know what you want, maybe the person that you want doesn't want you. So how do you solve that problem in terms of marketing your company brand, your company product?
Right. So, a lot of companies have this challenge on the branding side, and especially if they're early stage startup, especially if they're in an industry that's not consumer focused or it's a very niche industry. And so you have to go out there and be more of an evangelist and figure out how you're going to digitally brand the company. And branding has a lot of different meanings. It could mean, what's your digital presence. Branding can mean how are you represented in your particular industry. Branding can mean are you out there doing tech talks or employees out there doing tech talks or going to meetups, for instance. So it's a big piece, and if you want to attract certain type of talent, you have to brand yourself, obviously in a transparent light, in a true light, but in a way that will attract the right talent into your industry. So if you're targeting, so for example, a certain particular individuals that tend to go in one industry, you want to bring them on to this industry, you have to find a way to brand them. So it's pretty critical, and especially nowadays, there's been a fusion with marketing and recruiting on the branding piece, and it's going to keep evolving and growing. There's a lot of tools out there that are very just focused on recruitment branding to help drive recruitment success in attracting the talent. So I think these are, just for example, difference between like I hear Twitter and Rocket Fuel, totally different industries. Most people knew what Twitter was. Most people didn't know what Rocket Fuel was, and same with daiquiri. So there's different ways of branding and branding that particular talent. And there could be, for example, the brand internally. Maybe people heard negative things about the culture or the brand of the culture internally. How do you attract people or evolve it or turn it around to say, no, this is how it is now. Please check us out. So there's all different levels of branding, from the internal side, what people hear, to if they actually know about you, to the product branding. But it's a critical piece in trying to attract the talent. And if you're serious about hiring, you're going to try to find ways to get to the talent and get in front of them.
Speaking of which, Andrew, do you think websites like Glassdoor, you know how like people kind of secretly and anonymously post about their experience with the company, do you think that has actually really affected hiring?
Great. Yeah, I think, it's definitely one data point, and it's hard to say. It's really tough to say what's true and what's not on that side. I would say, oftentimes you have disgruntled people post negative comments, or you have maybe managers who ask their team members to post positive reviews on Glassdoor. So, in a sense, I think it's one data point, and it's a data point people should look at. But, there's always something behind that comment, or that you often find. You often find true feedback, but I've definitely been in environments where it's been asked to, or I've heard as well, to please write a positive remark if they see a negative one, or people who are often, maybe it was a mismatch or disgruntled, they'll write a negative comment. But it could be true too. But I would take it with a grain of salt. But I think it's important. You need to get your name out there. You need to get your presence out there, and it's good to have that marketing.
Last question before we move on to like the talent retention piece. So, let's say you're a startup. What would you say is the best outreach, like right off the bat? Is it going to college job fairs, or is it going to more general events?
Right, and that will dictate on the type of talent you're looking for overall. If you're looking for industry professionals, try to target areas of folks who want to find startups, like Angel List, for example, or meetups. Host a tech talk, host a meetup. That often will attract the right people to your office and get them a light on what you're actually doing. Or maybe you have a certain technology you're using. Maybe attract engineers, for example, to your office, or go to an event that they're using the same technology. So I think if you're early stage startup, you've got to go out there, have that presence. And if you want to target new grads, you already have that leadership presence, as a founding team. You want really smart, motivated people to help build the product. Yeah, really integrate with. I think one key thing with university hiring is really going into the college groups, the clubs, and integrating with the students, and hosting tech talks, hacking hours, or events within the group, connecting with professors, and also doing the career fair stuff. But that is very effective, and really engaging with the students, or internships, for example. I think, for example, Palantir is a great example of how they've attracted talent from the beginning to now. Is they hire really smart people, and those smart people were attracting other smart people. And they didn't initially have a infrastructure of recruiting staff for the first few years, but the team members and the engineers were going out there and finding new people and selling. We're really solving hard problems here, and we have amazing people doing it. So there's something said about that. So I think overall, depending on what you're looking for, target the right message in the right area. We have to go in and kind of make things happen.
So, let's say, hypothetically speaking now, since we're going this, you got the great person. Now, how do you keep them? Further to each one, just, these are some good questions that you and I previously talked about, how do you maintain high job satisfaction? Or if the company has very low job satisfaction, how do you turn that thing around? Thoughts, Andrew?
Yeah, great. So I'm going to give you the perspective on my side of hiring the talent, and also engaging with them, and working with the HR business partners and HR managers. Overall, I think it comes down from the top. It comes from top down, and what's the leadership philosophy. And one, is the company transparent on what's happening? Are they transparent with making sure employees have good feedback, have good mechanisms to grow within the organization, for instance? Serious companies, like for Daiquiri, for example, one of the key things that attracted me was they had a great foundation of HR leaders in the company, and they were very focused on empowering the employees and
Three things you immediately do if you suddenly found yourself with that authority and
yeah, that's a
responsibility.
good question. I haven't never been tasked with such a huge undertaking, but on the top of my head, right away, there's challenges because Yahoo's an entity that's trying to grow and evolve and stay relevant, and that's a challenge, and I'm sure internally, and also attracting the top talent. One thing is creating a vision of this is what we really want to do and how we want to grow and build this company and make it even more successful. Two is figuring out, do we have the right people in the right roles? Do we have the right leaders? And three, do we have to change anything in the work best practices or processes to make sure people are happy? End of the day, a lot of people will want to stay with an organization based on leadership and their manager and their team members, and that's a very important priority. And I think if people align with the mission and the task at hand, and they really enjoy what they're doing and the people they work with, there's something to say about that, and something to say that they would want to come in and really put on their best foot forward and go 100%.
We talked a little bit about this earlier in the webinar, and I'll bring it up again since you mentioned a few times how that, like you said, compensation is like, we were talking about common problems, obviously, and the common solution that you thought was probably misguided was compensation. The idea that key people, we have to give them more money, more benefits, more perks. Um, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I think people want to feel rewarded regardless of what they do and feel like the company cares about them. And good companies will have great perks, great and programs that they're evolving as well. And that's just one piece of it. You want to treat your employees right, especially if you're in a competitive market like Silicon Valley, for instance. It's very typical for companies to have lunch every day or food or have certain like health programs or some companies are creative. Maybe they have yoga classes, they have this kind of class. But there's something to say about making sure you treat your employees right. You say you have 401k, the next phase is having 401k matching. It's all part of the package and all part of that piece of the happier the employee is, the more productive they're going to be, and the more they're really going to dig in and want to do their best work. So I think it definitely plays a role. It's not going to be the whole solution because even at Google, and other companies like that, where you have great perks and very comfortable place. There's articles about people living in the parking lot and out of a van or whatever, and they're living, a day to day, and showers there, free food. But that's something to say. If you get to the point where your work is not challenging, or there's certain type of things that are hindering you, feel like there's a glass ceiling, and people often will look for the next challenge, but they'll do it selectively. But that will happen. But you really do have to treat your employees right. But that's only one piece, and making sure they're engaged with the work, they're challenged, and that goes with the HR and the manager side of things. But yeah, I think good companies will make sure their perks and their benefits are competitive, because that's part of the um, challenge you'll face in competitive markets like Silicon Valley.
Thank you, Andrew. I guess we'll go to our final slide. It's more of an overview of several things you said before, but maybe you want to spend more time going into detail about like DAQRI's unique challenges and solutions with this problem of talent acquisition and retention.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of great startups out there, and like us, DAQRI, we have an amazing product with a solution that really thinks going to revolutionize the workplace. And for any kind of person who's very technical, or someone who wants to dig into this kind of challenge and problem, we want to really bring them to that, and we have to try to attract those folks to our space. And part of that is really going out there, evangelizing, and having a digital presence, and bringing in people to see what we're all about. We're gonna double in size this year alone, so we're gonna do a lot of hiring across all industries and offices around the world. So and we're in a space that's hot, so we have that momentum going for us, and our product's pretty amazing. And overall, we want good, humble, hardworking people that want to work as a team. And I think that goes with the employer referral side of good people know good people, and you want to bring in people you want to work with and know that can really do a good job, because they're very passionate about what they do and they're a professional at their craft. And right now we are about 34% employer referral rate in our Sunnyvale office, which is not too bad. We haven't really springboarded an official employer referral campaign recently, so I'm personally trying to bring up in our office, at least up to 40% employer referral rate, and our retention is over 50%, and that's great. And when you have an employer referral, you have a lot of factors that make them a successful hire. One, you can vouch for the work. Two, you like working with them. Three, that maybe they have great integrity, they're honest, or they work hard, and they're going to stick when things are thick and thin, and they're going to push through and really try to make the company go to the next level. So I think these are things that we're going to face this year, and things that we're trying to improve on. And we have a great foundation. We have hiring managers that are very proactive. We have a company and employees that are very engaging and believe in bringing on the right people.
Thanks, Andrew. I think I just want to take a question that was asked earlier. It was a little bit longer, so I waited to the end. This is he says, Hitesh from Mumbai, India. He said he just founded his own company and he's still a startup. And how do you get to hiring when you only have like 3 people and you haven't really brought your brand to the market, obviously, because you were just founded?
Right. So great question. Part of a startup founder and any early leader is to be part of that staffing side. And some of the best things, I've worked with some great leaders and at some great startups, and one of the common traits is they're very active on the recruiting front. They're going on LinkedIn, reaching out to people. They're going to events. They're thinking of creative ways to brand themselves and brand the company. So you have to be a very active recruiting leader, and it won't stop for a while. And it's always going to be part of the process. We even have our CEO co-founder and our CTO co-founder. They're very active in hiring in terms of talking to candidates, referring people, talking to events. So in the end, it doesn't stop. It kind of evolves, but you have to really go out there and put yourself out there and think about who you're going to target. We have a engineering director here that's very proactive, and he reaches out to people on LinkedIn. He goes to events. He's seeing some lead or seeing some company that looks very interesting, throwing it over to us. So you have to be very active in this process and know that part of it, you're building your product, you're trying to get it out in the market, but at the same time, you got to attract the right talent to make that happen.
All right, I think it's about 11:45. We'll wrap this up. Just like kind of as a final thing to talk about on the Question Pro side about why we hosted this webinar. As some of you may know, maybe not all of you, Question Pro has recently launched a HR product called Workforce, and you can find us on questionpro.com/workforce. Follow us on Twitter at QuestionPro. This webinar, we kind of attached a special hashtag called #HiringBestPractices. If you have any questions about the webinar that weren't answered, feel free to tweet us. We'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, we'll give 10 seconds. Does anyone else have any questions? Please put it in the chat. Our moderators are waiting. 1, 2, 3. Otherwise, I think this is it. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really, really helpful. Actually, it's very interesting just hearing your experiences and comparing to mine personally. Is there any last thing you want to close out on, like one main point you want to make sure that people definitely remember when they leave this webinar?
Yeah, great. Well, it was my pleasure. I hope everyone got some interesting insight and experience from my end. I think overall, recruiting is a evolving process. It's a hard process. There's not one silver bullet, but there are core attributes and things and processes you can do to help make it easier. But it will be a lot of hard work, and you trying to find that right person.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. And then we'll sign off about now.
Thank you.